The first snowflakes began to fall, each a tiny spectacle against the darkening sky. From our living room window, I watched, a surge of childlike excitement coursing through me. It was a feeling I hadn't experienced in years, since my childhood in the South. Beside me, Sean, our 10-year-old son, pressed his face against the cold glass, his eyes reflecting the growing wonder of the world outside. "Look, Dad, it's a real winter wonderland," he exclaimed, his breath forming little clouds on the window. Janet, our 6-year-old daughter, was dancing around the room, trying to catch the snowflakes that fluttered down in our garden, visible through the window. Her laughter, pure and joyful, filled the room, reminding me of the innocence and wonder of childhood. My wife, Sarah, sat in the armchair, our 3-year-old Kevin nestled in her lap. Kevin's eyes were heavy with sleep, but the magic of the snow kept him awake, his tiny hands pointing excitedly towards the window. Sarah smiled softly, humming a lullaby, her gaze moving between our children and the snow outside. We had moved from Georgia to this snow-laden region for my new job, an unexpected opportunity that promised a better life for us. The transition was a leap of faith, leaving behind the familiar warmth of the South for the unknowns of a place where winter reigned supreme. We were used to mild winters, and the prospect of experiencing a real snowstorm was both thrilling and daunting. The children, having only known the light dusting of snow that rarely settled in Georgia, were mesmerized by the steadily accumulating blanket of white. For them, this was an adventure, a new world to explore. Sean and Janet spent weeks eagerly anticipating the first big snow, their excitement growing with each weather report. As the snowflakes continued their relentless dance outside, a blanket of white slowly covering the world as we knew it, I couldn't shake off a growing sense of unease. The pragmatist in me worried about the practicalities of enduring a heavy snowstorm, concerns about the power lines burdened under the weight of the snow, whether our stock of firewood would suffice, and if our pantry was well stocked enough in case we got snowed in for days. Sarah, sitting across from me with a mug of tea in her hands, shared these silent apprehensions. Her eyes, usually so full of warmth and laughter, flickered with a shadow of worry as she peered out at the thickening blanket of snow enveloping our world. Yet, amidst these creeping anxieties, the evening unfolded with a warmth that only a close-knit family could muster. We gathered around the fireplace, the heart of our home, engaging in board games that brought out lighthearted competitiveness and laughter. Sean and Janet's eyes sparkled with joy, their laughter echoing around the room as they strategized over the game board. Kevin, too young to understand the games, clapped his hands in delight at the sound of his siblings' laughter. Sarah, ever the heart of our family, brought out trays of hot cocoa topped with a generous helping of marshmallows, the sweet aroma mingling with the scent of burning wood. We took turns sharing stories, some from our past in Georgia, others fictional tales of adventure and magic, each narrated with dramatic flair to captivate our young audience. The fire's warm glow cast dancing shadows across the room, adding a sense of magic to our storytelling. As the night deepened, the world outside our window transformed into a landscape of eerie beauty. Trees coated in thick snow, their branches hanging heavy, the ground an unbroken expanse of white. But as I added another log to the fire, I couldn't help but glance anxiously at the window, where the snow seemed to fall with an increasing intensity. The laughter and chatter around me felt distant, muffled under the weight of my growing concern. Was our house equipped to withstand a storm of this magnitude? What if the power went out? Sarah caught my eye, her smile faltering for a moment as she too acknowledged the unspoken anxiety that had begun to weave its way into our evening. But she quickly masked it with a reassuring look, a silent promise that we would face whatever came together as a family. In that moment, I realized that this was more than just a snowstorm. It was a test of our resilience, our ability to find joy and comfort in each other's company amidst uncertainty and fear. It was a stark reminder of the unpredictability of nature and life itself. But as I looked around at my family, their faces illuminated by the fire's glow, I knew we had everything we needed to weather any storm. The morning after the snowstorm had blanketed our world in white, I decided to venture outside to replenish our dwindling firewood stock. Bundling up against the bitter cold, I stepped into the pristine snow, my boots sinking into the fluffy expanse with each step. The world was silent, the usual sounds muffled by the thick blanket of snow. As I approached the woodpile, something unusual caught my eye. A set of footprints in the snow leading directly to our house. They were fresh, distinct against the untouched snow, starting from the edge of the woods and stopping abruptly at our front door. There were no return tracks, no indication of where the person who left them had gone. It was as if they had simply vanished. A chill that had nothing to do with the cold air ran down my spine. Who could have been out here in the middle of a storm? And why had they come to our house? I scanned the surrounding area, but the snow offered no further clues. The forest stood silent and still, holding its secrets close. With a growing sense of unease, I gathered the firewood, my mind racing with possibilities. Should I tell Sarah about this? I didn't want to alarm her or the kids, but this was too strange, too unsettling to keep to myself. As I trudged back to the house, the weight of the firewood in my arms felt insignificant compared to the weight of my thoughts. Back inside, I found Sarah in the kitchen, her back to me as she prepared breakfast. I hesitated for a moment, the words stuck in my throat. Finally, I told her about the footprints, watching as her movement stilled, the concern in her eyes mirroring my own. We stood there for a moment, the warmth of the kitchen contrasting sharply with the cold dread that had settled in our stomachs. Sarah suggested we keep this discovery from Sean, Janet, and Kevin. They were already excited enough about the snow. There was no need to add fear to their wonder. We agreed to keep a closer eye on things, to be more vigilant, but not to let our fears overshadow the family's enjoyment of the snow. Yet, as we joined the children at the breakfast table, the image of those solitary footprints leading to our front door lingered in my mind, a silent harbinger of something unknown and uninvited. As the day progressed, a subtle change began to permeate our home. The laughter and chatter that had filled the rooms earlier seemed to quieten, replaced by a subdued tension. Sarah and I exchanged worried glances, our earlier discovery casting a shadow over the day. John and Janet, ever perceptive, began to sense the shift in the air. Their playful banter diminished, their smiles fading into looks of confusion and concern. "Is everything okay, Dad?" Sean asked at one point, his young eyes searching mine for reassurance. I forced a smile, not wanting to worry them with our unfounded fears. But I could tell they weren't entirely convinced. The discovery of the footprints became inevitable. It happened later that afternoon when Sean and Janet, bundled up in their winter gear, decided to build a snowman near the front porch. Their excited chatter ceased abruptly, replaced by a stunned silence. When I looked out the window, I saw them standing still, staring at the mysterious footprints leading to our doorstep. I rushed outside, trying to downplay the situation. Maybe someone knew this was our first winter storm and came to check if we were okay, I suggested, but my voice lacked conviction. The children nodded, but the spark of adventure had been replaced by a flicker of fear in their eyes. That evening, as we settled in, the atmosphere in our home had shifted palpably. The children were quieter, their laughter forced, their glances towards the windows frequent and uneasy. Sarah and I tried to maintain a sense of normalcy, but the effort was strained. Then, as night fell, the tension escalated. Subtle, unexplained noises started to punctuate the silence of our home. A creak here, a thud there, as if the house itself was responding to our fears. Shadows seemed to move just at the edge of our vision, playing tricks on our minds. The children clung to us, their imaginations fueling their fear. The final blow came with the power outage. The house plunged into darkness, the only light coming from the dying embers of the fireplace. The sudden loss of power startled us all, adding a tangible sense of vulnerability to our already heightened fears. In the darkness, every sound seemed amplified, every shadow more menacing. We huddled together in the living room, the glow of the fireplace casting a dim, flickering light. Outside, the wind howled, as if mocking our predicament. In that darkness, surrounded by the unknown and the unexplained, our family faced a night filled with anxiety and fear, each of us lost in our thoughts, wondering what the morning light would reveal. The following 2 days were a maelstrom of fear and anxiety, unlike anything our family had ever experienced. We were trapped not just by the snow, but by the growing sense of dread that enveloped our home. The first night was long and restless. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind against the windows, sent shivers down our spines. The children slept fitfully, waking up at the slightest noise. Sarah and I took turns comforting them, whispering reassurances that felt hollow even to our ears. By day, we tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy, playing board games and reading books. But the tension was palpable, a silent intruder in our midst. The strange noises continued, unexplainable thuds and scratches that seemed to come from the walls, the attic, the very air around us. At times, we would catch glimpses of shadows flitting past the windows. But when we looked again, there was nothing but the endless expanse of snow. As the hours ticked by, our rational explanations grew thinner. Sean and Janet clung to each other, their eyes wide and fearful. Kevin, sensing the mood, became fretful and tearful. Sarah and I exchanged worried glances, our own fear growing as we struggled to provide comfort. The second night was worse. The power was still out, and the firewood was running low. We huddled together for warmth, the darkness around us feeling almost suffocating. I could feel the family's fear, a tangible thing in the air. It felt as if we were being watched, as if the house itself had taken on a life of its own. In those 2 days, our home had transformed from a haven into a prison. The unknown, the unexplained, had seeped into its walls, turning every shadow into a threat, every noise into a warning. We were a family bound together not just by love, but by a shared terror of what lay beyond our understanding, waiting in the relentless snow. After what seemed like an eternity, the snowstorm finally began to wane, its once furious howl dwindling to a mere whisper. As the first rays of sunlight pierced through the clouds, we cautiously stepped outside, our eyes squinting against the brightness. The world around us was transformed, an unending expanse of white stretching as far as the eye could see. The relief we felt was palpable, a collective sigh escaping our lips. Yet, beneath that relief, the unexplained events of the past 2 days hung over us like a dark cloud. The mysterious footprints, the strange noises, the fleeting shadows. None of it made sense. As we began the task of shoveling snow and assessing the way to town, our movements were mechanical, our minds still trapped in the terror of the unknown. As we prepared to leave for town, the house behind us stood silent, a stark reminder of the fear we had endured. I took one last look back, expecting to see nothing but the empty windows reflecting the morning light. But there in the upper window, was it just a trick of the light? Or did I see a shadow flicker past, vanishing as quickly as it appeared? We left with more questions than answers. Who had left those footprints leading to our door? What were the sources of those unexplained noises and shadows? The questions lingered in the air, unanswered, as we drove away from the house. And I couldn't help but wonder as we left the embrace of our once safe haven, what secrets lay hidden within its walls? What stories were left untold in those snowbound days?